Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Grosso University educational webinar. My name is Dominic Caminata, CEO of Grosso University, the industry-leading training group. Let me ask you a question. Is your business a ticking time bomb because you truly don't know your numbers? Do you truly own your business, or does your business own you? Do you have a reporting accuracy and visibility you need to make data-driven decisions and know exactly how every department in your business is performing at a snapshot? If you're an owner that would like to master your numbers and as a result master your business, today's educational webinar will be an absolute game changer for you. Today's webinar is going to be titled, Own Your Numbers, Own Your Business, Building the Ultimate Executive Dashboard. And today I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Matt Colligan, who's the president and founder of Home Pride, based in Colorado and Sacramento. And he's easily one of the brightest minds I have ever met when it comes to knowing your numbers to optimize and grow your business. Due to Matt's expertise, his company Home Pride has grown by an absolutely astronomical 4,000%, eclipsing over 20 million of installed revenue in just 3 years. There are many factors, of course, that contribute to that kind of growth, but I also know Matt attributes a great deal of his success to knowing his numbers and using this executive dashboard to make his business grow and thrive. So Matt, first I want to thank you for traveling all the way from Colorado to be here live in the studio.
In sunny Madison, Wisconsin.
Sunny, gloomy, cold, miserable Madison, Wisconsin, yeah. So I apologize for that. You leave one cold climate for another. But obviously you've been active in this business for 3 decades, over 30 years. And you've been a part of a lot of different organizations. You've held many different executive roles. So if you don't mind, can you just share a little bit about your journey in this industry and ultimately how you became to be the founder and owner of Home Pride?
Sure. I started, my career essentially was started at Champion Windows. So in 2000, 2001-ish, before 9/11, I started there in the sales department, learning how to sell home improvements. That was where I started, and quickly took over a branch for Champion for Southern Colorado, and had that for about 10 years. Left Champion. I tell everybody that's where I got my MBA, was with Champion Windows. I'm just a high school graduate,
Yeah,
barely
exactly.
by the skin of my teeth.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's good. I mean, having that real world experience, and from what I've heard from many people, Champion had a very well oiled machine there. They're very high level professional leadership and management, all this stuff.
They taught us a lot.
Yeah.
So if you came out of the world of Champion, you got the world of hard knocks. You got management telling you this is the way it's going to be. This is the way you're going to do it. This is how to do it. But then you also had that entrepreneurial spirit and the freedom to do what you needed to do and experiment and learn and.
Isn't that where you took away that man in the middle kind of philosophy of leadership? Can you just explain that briefly? What that means?
So we called it the manager in the middle, man in the middle concept. And essentially, my office was even set up like this, where I had one door for in the warehouse on the left side of the building and one door on the right side of the building. And every morning when I came in, I'd do kind of my basic things at my computer. Then I'd get up and I'd go around to every department, and we would call it spinning plates. We would go spin the plates every morning, walk around, touch every department, and then see where your time needed to be spent that day.
Wow.
And where's the biggest fire of the day, and that's where you would spend the time. And so it forced you to understand every aspect of the business.
Yeah, I think that's really, really smart. And I know you carry that through to this very day, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's important. Obviously, we all wear a lot of hats, and I think it's vital for the people at the very top of the org chart to really have a good understanding of what's going on in those departments, and knowing, like you said, where do I need to invest my time and energy? Because you have a finite amount of time and energy you can give, and obviously we want to get the best return on our time investment. So I think that's really smart. So of course you've amazing experience with Champion, and then you even held you were like the CEO of the Better Business Bureau for a certain branch. Like, how did that transpire?
When I left Champion, I had an opportunity. I was I was already on the board of the BBB at the time, and there was an opportunity to kind of slide in as an interim while we were finding a permanent replacement. So I was there for, I think it was 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, just holding things together, straightening out a few things there at the BBB. The BBB is a business like anything else. It's a small business. So it has its own small business challenges and whatnot. So yeah, I spent some time there, and that really kind of informed the way I went to market in future opportunities, because you get to see the consumer side of what goes on at the BBB, along with what you learn at Champion. Bringing those two things together kind of informed the way we move forward in new endeavors.
Yeah, it's one thing to learn from your own mistakes, but you can also learn from the mistakes of others. So having that peek behind the curtain, so to speak, as to what's really going on, how these homeowners are being treated, and a lot of cases the horrific situations they're put through, it makes it kind of cool to reverse engineer that. Now we're going to create an organization that is going to give them that 5-star experience so we can really take care of our clients and grow that way. So, of course, you learned a lot of lessons along the way, had a lot of amazing executive positions. Now, evolving into this concept of knowing your numbers, the executive dashboard.
Right.
Are there experiences that you had personally in your journey, in your career, that really inspired you to get this dialed in? Or have you seen horror stories from other companies along the way where it's like, man, if you don't know your numbers, you literally are a ticking time bomb?
But yeah, both. At Champion, we had a pretty good set of reporting that was established and mature, and there was a way that we like to look at things, and that's what I was used to. So when you grow up under something that you don't know any different, so their reporting and the way that we looked at our numbers, and the way we were forced to look at our numbers, and the way that we were forced to look at a financial statement and report to your supervisor at even though we were managing partners, we still had to report to the other ownership. So you had to know your numbers, you had to have your financials, you had to so all of that was good. That was all giving you the information necessary to run the business and to bring everything forward into new opportunities. So I knew that leaving Champion, this is just the way you do it. So any new company or any thing that we started in the future is just the way I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's very similar to me in sales. It's like the only system I ever learned was the Grosso system. So I'm like, this is how you do it. I don't know any other way. It's like, that's the way I was groomed into the industry. So
knowing that, and then going in and starting, I actually had a couple other endeavors before Home Pride. Each time we did something, it was, okay, make sure you got the account first. Most people think that that's just an expense line and a drag on the whole thing, when it's complete opposite. If you don't know your numbers, you are going to go out of business at some point. You can only run on feel for so long. Entrepreneurial feel. I think this is right. I think I know what's going on. You can only do that for so long. Just like they say, when do you go out of business? When did you know you're bankrupt? Well, it happens slow, and then all of a sudden. That's exactly what'll happen.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about in the intro here, making data-driven decisions, and not just always going by the seat of your pants and off, the way you feel that day. So I think that's really, really vital.
Exactly. So when I started Home Pride, I said, okay, we got to have the accounting in place. That's the first thing that we're going to do. And then what you find out is, coming from a big company like Champion to your own, okay, you got like 3 options. You've got Market Sharp, you've got i360, you've got Lead Perfection, and then maybe you could figure out something on your own, spreadsheets and do things like that. And so when you start using these off-the-shelf softwares, I quickly realized, like, holy cow, this does not give me the information that I need And I have to conform everything that I was doing and the way that we thought through the appointment dates and reporting on the appointment date versus the lead date and all these kinds of different date parameters. I was stuck with what the box told me.
Yeah.
This is it. This is the only way we're going to report. This is the only way it's going to spit it out. If you want to change any of it, you might as well hire somebody and alter and have a full-time job just working in spreadsheets. And that's what everybody's job ended up being, was just manipulating numbers so we could see what we're doing instead of focusing on revenue generating work, right?
Yeah.
We're focused on, I got a bunch of spreadsheet people.
Yeah, and a lot of owners can probably relate to this watching this webinar. Like, you wake up, your first hour in the morning is opening up all the different tabs and all the different spreadsheets and trying to translate each individual dashboard or platform to figure out, okay, how is my business actually running? And it can be absolutely overwhelming because a lot of these CRMs and a lot of these dashboards that exist, they're not comprehensive enough where you can get insight into every department all at a snapshot. And it seems like that was really something that fueled you to make this happen. Yeah. And you made quite the investment of time and money to build this thing out the way you wanted it.
Yeah, and so what we ended up doing is we took Lead Perfection. We liked the front end of that because we weren't going to build a new front end to something at the time. Yeah. And we said, okay, can we pull the information out of there? And so, as everybody knows, if you're watching this webinar, you know that our business is really Frankenstein together with a bunch of different apps to run the whole thing. And so everybody says you can have your own data. Mm-hmm. And they all say that we'll provide it to you, but try to get it out of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you get it out of them, it comes out in this gobbledygook of just stream of consciousness, is what it seems like. And you have no idea what to do with this. What am I going to do with this? So then you have to hire somebody and figure out how you're going to get that into the new system if you want to change something. Mm-hmm. So in the industry, what they call that is stickiness. They are creating stickiness so that you never leave. Yeah, you're stuck. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be stuck with a vendor. Yeah, I don't want to be stuck with a vendor. So what we did, we decided to invest in a data warehouse where we would take the information in, put it into a centralized database. We would normalize the data for our purposes and dump everything into one place. So that way, one day, if I decide I want to change from QuickBooks and go to Dynamics, or if I want to go from Lead Perfection to I360, or I want to go, it's just easier. Yeah. And the reporting that we've done with that allows it to be, it'll be a consistent report. It'll look the same whether I go from one CRM to the other. Then I have my reporting is always the same. And as we know, it's the reporting that really ends up driving the business because it informs my decision making if I use it correctly.
Yeah, and that's what obviously you've mastered over the years. And people watching this webinar, again, some of you may relate to the pain and trauma of switching CRMs. And what a nightmare operation that is, what a heavy lift, and having to relearn everything over again and navigate it. So having your own executive dashboard that's pulling that information, it's consistent and it's designed and built the way you want it to, it's going to certainly make those transitions a lot less stressful and a lot more streamlined. So that's very smart.
Just in the life cycle of Home Pride, we went from, we first started with Market Sharp because it was easy. Yep. And just to get things off the ground, you got to have a basic sense of what's going on. And then we moved to, we tried to do a custom thing that didn't necessarily work. And then we moved to Lead Perfection, and that's how we ended up right here. And so now that's where that's where my thought process has evolved to normalizing that data because if you have to switch, or if you want to switch, because you're just switching one set of problems for another set of problems. That's all you're doing. Mm-hmm. So you want to have that data normalized on the back end and be able to run these reports and run custom things. And you want to look at things in a weird way one day, and I want to look at it this way, and I got this idea that, oh, maybe I can reach this customer in this pocket by doing this, but I'd like to see the data in a different way. Now I can do that all by ourselves.
So one thing that popped in my mind is, what do you feel having your own executive dashboard like this does to the valuation of a company? Like if someone is looking to buy a business and they literally have their own executive dashboard that they can have the power and autonomy to modify and adapt and adjust on the fly, what do you think that does to the valuation of a business?
I think when someone's looking at the business, when it comes time to sell, when you have them come in and they come into the office and they say, okay, let's take a look at your operation. Or you're on lead perfection, you're on market sharp, you use these reports, great. Well, a sophisticated buyer has already seen and done some of this type of reporting. Like if you're talking to any of the PE guys that are out there right now, that are looking at things, they already have these dashboards. The big guys are doing this type of stuff. And so when you show somebody something like this, that, hey, I'm already there, and this is how we slice and dice the data, and this is the way we're able to do it. This is the decisions that we were able to make because we had this information. It makes you look like you're just you're at a different level than anyone else.
Yeah, it makes them feel right at home and comfortable too, because it's something that's familiar with them, and they see obviously you made the investment at a high level, professional in your business. So that's really, really important. Now, a lot of times when you're speaking, you talk about, some of the data from the Small Business Administration, how very few companies make it to their 10th anniversary.
Right.
Obviously, I think knowing your numbers plays a role, but what are some of the biggest reasons why you feel companies are taking time bombs or meet that inevitable fate where they just can't survive to that 10 year? It's less than 33% or whatever, make it past 10 years.
Right. It's a small amount.
Small amount.
And the SBA will tell you, and we've all heard this, it's because the number one reason is because a business is undercapitalized. So they don't have enough cash to ride out the storm. Yeah. So why don't you have enough cash? Well, either we've taken too much out because we were using it as a lifestyle business, and we're just pulling it out. Because our numbers say that we can, and that we kind of feel good about that, and maybe we're getting bad numbers. So some of these things that we're looking at trends, and we're starting to build out dashboards that looks at like the rate of change, and looking at so we can see trends into the future, so that you know how much cash you need to keep set aside, so that when you do run into two things. If you run into a hiccup, maybe an administration that's not business friendly would be a big hiccup. That, or you may, or you got enough cash for an opportunity. So you're going to ride out a hiccup, or you're going to use it for an opportunity, or it sits on the sidelines. But if you don't have that information at your fingertips, then you're working on feel. Yeah. And in this day and age, this is a data-driven world. So if you don't, you should be using data to drive decisions, not feeling.
So one question I was going to ask you, obviously you've had a lot of success at Home Pride. What are you forecasting for the following year, 2025? And I guess what tools and resources are you utilizing to help you make a more accurate forecast? Because a lot of people just throw goals against the wall. There's really no rhyme or reason for it. They're like, it sounds good, growing by 30% next year, but there's no data behind it.
That is actually my goal for next year is to grow by 20%. I'm looking for a solid, rock solid growth percentage. Nothing that is 4,000% growth like we had. I mean, that was crazy.
Strapped your rocket ship there.
And that's okay when you're going from 0 to 20 million, and then you hit a number, and you kind of got to when you start something, you've got to let your process and your systems mature because we were changing everything so quickly all the time. My people were probably every time I'd walk into the leadership meeting, I could feel their eyes rolling at me when I'm saying.
Well, what's the next new thing we got to change?
Here's the next thing that's going to change. But some of that stuff we had to do because we kept outgrowing everything, and so now we're settling in. It's actually getting easier. Somebody once told me, it's a heck of a lot easier running a $20 million a year business than it is a $5 million a year business, because at $5 million you're in it all the time, and you're the guy running around all the time, kind of involving yourself into everything. At 20, you've got people helping. Even probably at 10, you've got people helping. It's easier. So the bigger you get, the easier it is sometimes. I really believe that. And it's the same on the lead gen side, right? It's easier to generate leads for 20 salespeople than it is 4.
It's
4 salespeople. The question is, well, do we have availability? Can we get over here? Can we get to that location? Can we do this? And we're always playing Tetris with the schedule. At 20, the answer is always yes.
Yes, that's a really great point. And obviously, everyone watching this, there's a lot of different levels of performance that our audience will be at. Some may be just starting out, some may already run a $100 million organization, but all these tips and things we're going to be discussing are going to be applicable to anyone watching this. But one thing everyone can relate to is rapid inflation and the cost of goods and materials and labor, how it's really spiraling out of control. And some people have a hard time adjusting their prices accordingly, accounting for future price increases, things of that nature. I talk to companies, Matt, where they'll go over a year before making any change or adjustment to their price. And even at that, they're so focused just on one element of price increase, but not everything. Like all the little things that go into whatever product or service you're offering, we got to be on the ball. So what are some strategies that you've put to work for you where, of course, we can set the correct price initially, but then make sure we have a strategic approach to how we're going to increase our prices accordingly as time goes on?
I don't know how you look at it. I look at it as a function of the net close rate. So if my net close rate is at the higher end of what my expectation is, my pricing needs to go up. Right? So there's a sweet spot in there. And I think for me, my sweet spot is they should be closing in the 30s to high 30% range. And so if they're in that range, I'm always I like to do a monthly price increase. And we use Leap or Sales Pro. And I add that into Sales Pro, and we don't really say anything about it. And you could do a 0.5% a month, and that gets you 6 points over the year. And it just boils the frog. No one ever says anything, and then you're at the end of the year, you got a 6% price increase.
So I think that's such an important message, and we've been talking about that for a long time, especially with our clients, because a lot of times they do wait a year or sometimes longer, and then they hit their team with like a 10-15% price increase. And what does that do to the morale of a sales team? Or like, oh my God, we got to ask 15.
What's that do to your month?
What does that do to your month? So now having these gradual incremental price increases where it's almost, you can't even notice it. They don't even feel it. It makes it a lot easier for them to be slowly conditioned to asking for more money. And I've had this experience in my career. I tell the story a lot. This is why we talk about profitability. The only one that cares about your prices being too high is you. It's between your ears. So when I first started at Mad City, our windows were about $800 retail. We could sell them for like $620 at par. And inevitably, the salespeople said we're too expensive. And then we increased our prices to roughly around $1,000 a window retail, and of course discounted down to $800 something. And the salespeople were like, "No way, we're going to be able to get $1,000. There's already too much money at $800." Our closing rate increased, and I can show you year after year after year over the 10 years I was there. every time we had a price increase, sales performance increased. Because there's something to be said about, of course, when the sales rep's selling on value, not price, and when you're coming in there with a premium offering and exclusivity and follow the formula that we teach and preach of the master presentation, the prospect in their mind's like, well, it's more expensive, so it has to be better.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really great lesson, that don't be afraid to increase your prices and be strategic about it, so you're not blindsiding your team, because it's going to be necessary. I mean, I can't believe a company can even stay in business without raising their prices monthly. Yeah. How fast are things increasing in price? It's absolute madness.
It's all about the process.
Yeah.
It's nothing about the price.
Yeah.
It's all about the process. We I think last month or a couple months ago, one of our reps sold $153,000 worth of bathrooms on one job, first call close. So 153.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
So on a first call close, so it's really just about what's going on between the ears. I remember at Champion, we used to show articles, and this was mid 2000s. So we used to show articles in Life magazine from the 80s that they were selling a window for $1,200 an opening in the 80s.
In the 80s, yeah.
And we were selling a window for $800 or $700, and we were using that to normalize. So if in the 80s they could do it, there was no financing at that time.
That's crazy.
It was
still relying on cash.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's really important. And I don't want to share this. I was working with a client. I'm not going to obviously name the company, but they were having a rash of salespeople. They were turning in jobs at 60, 70% off retail. And this was becoming a habit. They were getting used to turning these jobs that were so upside down in profitability, they could barely even afford to do the work. You know, there's the contractor that Rick Grosso always talked about. They come into the house and say, our prices are so low, we lose money in every job, and they're telling the truth, right? So I was working with their leadership team to reestablish how their salespeople negotiate. And of course, there was some sales training that went into that. But we also made a policy that if you turn in a job below 30% off retail without manager authorization, it's going to count as a no sale. And believe me, there was some, moaning and groaning and kickbacks for about a month. About 1 month, there were some growing pains there. But I'm not even kidding. It was like a switch. After a month, all the salespeople were not only selling more profitably, but their closing rate increased. Closing rate went up by about 10%, selling for more money. And I'm just like, what does that tell you guys? It was all between your ears.
Yeah.
It was this imaginary obstacle you created and fabricated in your mind. And the only one that believes that is you. So that's just a really great lesson. We can talk for hours about that.
Literally, I used to change when I was in sales. I would change my own retail price to play with my own head. So I would bump it up so that I didn't go below a certain number. So I knew I was going to make a certain amount, just to prove to myself that it was all in my head.
Yeah.
It really didn't matter.
Yeah. It's crazy. The one most important sale we got to make is selling ourselves to ourselves, right? And that includes selling yourself on your company, your product, your price, and all the things above. So I want to talk about the current search demand trends and how you use that to forecast the cost per lead. How does that impact the cost per lead? When you look at current trends in the industry, demand trends.
So when we looked at the trends, we were seeing that the search traffic was ticking up before we went into COVID. And then it peaked at COVID, and then it dropped back down as we came out of COVID. And really the stimulus money, when it came in, you could see how the search traffic and the demand for the main categories, windows, siding, roofs, and bathrooms, all peaked. But then as the stimulus money went away and got spent, and we know when that happened, because the banks know the time when deposits were down, you could see that the search traffic dropped off. Wow. and it went back. But we're on an upswing again. And so what we've seen is that that our lead cost is increasing because as the demand has dropped on the search traffic, that means it's harder to get the leads. So your lead providers are spending more money to get the leads. So therefore their costs are increasing. So that's why we're seeing increase in overall lead costs. So we've seen, I think it was a 30 for some product categories, like a 30% increase in lead cost. Other product categories, 60 to 80% increase in lead cost. So we have a dashboard that we built just specifically for this because when we were at the Agoji summit, we talked about this. I saved $1 million, literally $1 million because of this dashboard.
My goodness.
Is it just being able to see what pockets and talk about dynamic pricing and having different pricing strategies for the leads and negotiating using real data and using real information from my market. I was able to say, hey, we need lead vendors, we need to look at this in a different way. And we did, and we've dropped 5 points on our marketing expense because of this, and that is a direct savings.
Yeah, that's massive.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of companies, their marketing budgets are literally spiraling out of control, and there's really no strategy. And a lot of times they're trying to do the same marketing resources that had a history of performance, and they're kind of digging their heels in on these marketing resources, and they're not knowing where to go next and like how to make these adjustments to future trends and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people are excited to see this dashboard, and certainly we have a lot to cover when it comes to this ultimate executive dashboard. So I wanted to actually go ahead and dive into the sales performance report, just kind of kick things off here. So what is the sales performance report, and exactly what data is this providing to leaders of teams so they can essentially build and hold accountable a sales powerhouse?
Yeah. So we call it our SPR report, sales performance report, and what it starts with is the designer. We actually plug in the cohort, meaning what sales class were they in, so that we could maybe measure, maybe Dominic trained this class and Matt trained that class, and we want to
really
compare
smart.
that a little bit. So we'll look at that sometimes.
I work with companies where they have locations over the country and they have different trainers, and it's really cool to be able to compare the performance from one trainer to the next.
Yeah,
because maybe you make the decision at some point, hey, this trainer, their performance is double the other trainers. Maybe we need to just make this person our official corporate trainer permanently.
Yeah. So that was an idea of Attila. He's the one that built a lot of this out, or all of it. He's like, we need to put cohorts in here and so that we can compare this. That's a great idea,
really smart.
Attila.
Well, that is the beauty of what you're building here, right? Is when those ideas come into your mind, it's like, let's add it in.
Yeah.
And you can just continue to build this thing out so that it has everything you could ever want to see or know.
So then the first real column of metrics in the SBR report is called the NSLI column. We all know that.
Well, let's just break it down. I'm assuming most people watching this understand what NSLI is, net sale per lead issued. But if you don't mind, just break that down like really simply. How do you calculate NSLI, and why is that a key metric that everybody should be at least leveraging to hold their team accountable?
It essentially is measuring the efficiency of the individual or the team, right? And so how do we measure that? So every lead that gets issued, so we take our total net volume or net sales divided by every lead that was issued to you. I don't care if it was if it canceled at the door. I don't care if it
one party, no show.
None of that matters. If it was issued
and they show up to the house,
knuckles on the door, as we say. It gets charged to them, and it is everything in between an issued appointment or an issued lead and a net sale is measured in that NSLI number.
I used to love that. So you can see on your report here, you have reps in the 5,000, 4,000 range. So now you don't have to disclose what your commission percentage is, but let's say hypothetically it's 10% that is the average commission your reps make. Because you get reps that moan and groan about the drive time or going to a one-party lead or no-show or whatever it is, fill in the blank excuse. So obviously we're big proponents on your number one job description is to deliver masterful presentations with as many lucky homeowners as humanly possible. You know, if they got a pulse, you're going to go in there and deliver the best presentation they've ever seen in their life. So I take this NSLI, if they got a $4,500 NSLI and they're making 10% commission on average, that literally means they get $450 just for showing up at the door, regardless of what it is. So if it's a no-show, you got $450. If it's a one leg, $450. Doesn't matter what the result is. You get $450 just for showing up, not to mention the amount of money we invested for that lead, right? So there's a huge investment in you and in marketing to deliver a performance. So instead of figuring out how can't I or what excuse can I make to basically cover my butt, figure out how can I be solution oriented. You're getting paid to be solution oriented, be creative, think outside the box. No one's going to roll out the red carpet for you. But we are making that investment in you. You're getting paid to be there. So we don't want to hear the moaning and groaning that I had to drive 2 hours to this lead. If I gave you $450 cash right now to go drive an hour and a half, would you complain about it? Of course not. That's essentially what this is.
Right.
So I love that number for a lot of reasons. And
that's exactly how we use it.
Yeah.
So we use it that exact way. So the first thing when somebody says, well, I just had two no-shows or I had 2 cancellations and like, listen, your NSLI is $5,600. You made $561
on each one of those.
On each one of those. I mean, what are you complaining about?
And then no-shows. How many people watching this have had a no-show and ended up selling it? Because they waited around. The homeowner showed up eventually. They got to come home eventually, right? I literally had stories of salespeople that didn't have any other leads conflicting for the day. They had an open schedule. They, walked around the neighborhood, maybe even tried to generate some leads, but the homeowners inevitably came home 2 hours later. And of course, because the homeowners were late, they had a little empathy on their side. The homeowners felt bad. They get in there and they sell a $40,000, $50,000 sale. And I use that as a shining example in sales meetings. That's a $50,000 sale that sales rep capitalized on that I guarantee 90% of the salespeople in this industry would have just simply walked away from making an excuse. So that's the example I'm given about being creative, being solution oriented. How bad do you want it, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? We talk about that all the time.
Yeah, we require a minimum that they stay there 20 minutes.
Yeah,
that's a minimum.
Yeah,
and depending on who you are or how assertive you are.
So I always told my salespeople 45 minutes, and the only reason I did that is because me personally, in my 10 years of running leads full time, every time I left after 20, 30 minutes,
they would always show up.
They would always show up. It's amazing how much ground you can cover in 10, 15 minutes. I would literally be like 100 miles away 15 minutes later. I get a call from Leanna in the call center. Hey, they showed up. I need you to go back. I'm like, oh my God, I am so far away. So I'm like, I'm going to wait at least 45 minutes now because there's something about that 20 to 30 minutes. Because if people get stuck in traffic or they're running home late from work, 20, 30 minutes burns up quickly. But for me, it was like there's something magical about that 45-minute marker where then it was most commonly an actual no-show.
Yeah, the thing that always drove me or drives me nuts is you're there, why not do some business-related activity?
Yeah.
5, 5, 10. 5 to the left, 5 to the right, 10 across the street. Exactly. At least when you call back to the office and you say, hey, I'm leaving, and you get to say, well, I'm leaving. I did do a 5, 5, 10, and I tried to. It makes the owner and makes the rest of the team feel good about the effort that we're putting into the leads that we're providing. Because you're like, this person actually cares. Mm-hmm. They actually care about themselves and their pocketbook, where they want to generate business instead of just always taking.
I love that.
So
yeah, some of the best sales I've ever had. And again, I'm not saying I was a huge door knocker and all this stuff. I'd be lying if I told you that. But I can tell you some of the most gratifying sales I've ever had in my life is when I door knocked and generated a lead and sold it. That was like the most monumental experience for me, because plus it made me really appreciate the marketing department, what they do to hand over these leads on a silver platter every day. I'm like, I'm not going to complain about a lead ever again, because I know how much work goes into it, especially like a qualified lead. So I think that's a really
That's the greatest thing that I remember telling my wife when we first got married is, babe, we'll never have to worry. She says, what do you mean? Well, because I know that I can go out there right now, I can knock 100 doors, I can get myself into a home, I can probably into 2 or 3 homes maybe, and then close at least 1 to 2 of those jobs and walk out of each one of those houses with a check for $10,000. We will always be okay.
Yeah, there's always job security.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So NSLI, obviously a huge one. So what else do we got on this report?
So then we go from NSLI, then we look at our what we call our net operating delta. So we decided to put this in and say, okay, based on the average of the group, are you underproducing or overproducing based on the average of the group? And so we can see in here some of these people were overproducing during this time period. This person produced 129,000 over. This person was 15,000 under the average. So you could see as a business owner, what's the opportunity that I'm missing, or what did I pick up because they're overperforming?
Yeah.
It just puts real numbers to it.
That's exciting.
The next one is our sales performance score. We've talked about this. You and I have talked about this in the past.
I absolutely love this because I run into this issue quite often with companies where they'll have one team selling basements where the average ticket is 80 grand.
Yeah.
And then they'll have a bath team where their average ticket is 15,000. And like, how do I benchmark them in a way where it's consistent across product verticals, even though, you know, the basement guys have an NSLI of 10 grand and then the bath guy is like 3,500.
Yeah.
How do I create like one performance score to rule it all? And this is what you've mastered here. I love it.
So what we do on the sales performance score, it's just a simple formula: demo percentage plus gross close percentage plus net close percentage.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And add those 3 together, and that comes up with your sales performance score. And so when we implement some of these metrics, like this one was a new one for us about 2 years ago. And we said, well, what are we going to do with that? I said, I don't really know yet. Let's just let it sit there and start tracking it. And then we'll get some data, and then we'll decide how we're going to use that. Yeah. So now we'll use it in contests. We'll use it in other motivational ways. If your score is high enough, you get this.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant because, I mean, it's important because NSLI is great, but you can also have a high NSLI even though your net close rate is weak because you had a couple home run hits. But truthfully, your sales performance score is not going to be very high.
Right.
So I like that when you have NSLI and a sales performance score, it really encouraged that salesperson to really strive not only for the home run hits and, you know, knock the NSLI out of the park, but make sure they're still putting up good numbers on the close and demo rate. And it's crazy how many companies where I talk to salespeople, they still don't understand how much they impact their own demo rate. They think that that's out of their control. And obviously we push back on that. So I think having a score that includes that in there is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, you can see, and what's nice about this report, I can immediately sort.
Yeah.
And so I can go in here and say, okay, look at this person. She has 124 sales performance score, which would be on the lower end of our scale. Her NSLI is $4,038.
Yeah.
I know who this person is, and what I'll tell you is that she's a whale hunter.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
yeah, exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, it's exactly, and I knew if I found her that's what it would look like. Now, from my perspective, she's efficient with my leads, but she could be so much better.
Yeah.
She could be so much better. And I'll guarantee you this is, she probably has a low demo rate. Yep. We like to see the demo rates in the upper 80s and more like a 90% demo rate. And then we look at her net close is low.
Yeah.
But her gross was okay. So the blend between those 3 things give us a sales performance.
Yeah, when I'm working with salespeople too, that's why I love that you break down all these different numbers. Is, you know, a lot of time we focus on closing, and Lord knows closing is an important thing we need to be teaching and preaching. But what I like to do with salespeople is take all the different KPIs, you know, such as their demo rate, their close rate, their average sale, their retention, all these different numbers. and show them if you just improved in these areas by 5% across each one of these KPIs, and you go through that exercise with them for the month, but also for the year, what they see is they can damn near double their income for a year by getting a little bit better at all the critical areas of selling. So that's why it's really great if you can really break these things down and track it, and having that sales performance score attached to it, I think is great, because it gives them that motivation to really strive to improve in all these little areas so they can get obviously recognized in their organization. Now, do you have an actual benchmark in place for the SPS? Where it's like, hey, if you're below 100, that's literally
125 is the benchmark.
Okay.
So then as we go down, now we've just got the counts. So you got your issued count, your demo count. So you can sort by each one of those. You see who's running the most, who's demoing the most. Our demo rates, our gross sale count, gross dollar amount, gross closing rate, and then this one I added in, and I don't know if everybody tracks this, but this one, I can draw a direct correlation between closing percentage and gross finance percentage.
Yep.
And so this was a real eye-opener when we added this into this about a year and a half ago. Where we started tracking everybody, how often is Dom presenting financing or running a credit app on his gross sales. And we could see, literally, I got the data to show it. If you're in 67% gross finance percentage, your closing percentages are of the highest. They're over 30, in the mid 30s typically is where you'll.
And I guarantee if you looked at their average sale and their retention, there's probably a correlation there where the people that leverage financing more have a higher average sale, have better retention.
There's no doubt.
In a lot of cases are more profitable too, because when you're relying on cash, you're kind of beholden to whatever that homeowner has available as disposable income, and they got a lot more leverage at the negotiating table to kind of beat that salesperson up a little bit. Whereas with financing, I'm not concerned about price at all. I'm just focusing on fitting it into a budget that's affordable. So when you can walk into a house focused on affordability and not price, that's very empowering for a salesperson. So I definitely, that's something we shout from the mountaintops a lot. And now, like our partners at Rilla, they're analyzing like 1 million sales encounters. And kind of like what you said, it jumps off the page that the reps that are more proficient at leveraging financing have higher average sales, higher closing, better retention, and overall just top performers.
There's no doubt about it. It's not even a question.
Exactly.
It's so when you run into somebody that says, "Well, we don't," they're proud that they're
our
all
customers
cash.
pay cash.
That's great. But if you've set up your financing correctly, you should have staged funding anyways, so you don't really need you're not worried about the cash flow. I just know they're leaving so much on the table.
Yep, exactly. And if you're watching this and you do expert finance training, give us a call. That's something that we preach a lot at Grosso University. So,
so you got your gross finance percentage, and then our pending finance count. So how many jobs are in pending finance? For us, that we don't count anything until literally. My accountant will not let us count anything until the check has cleared and hits the bank. And in some cases, it's got to sit in the bank for 24 hours before she says, okay, we will take this out of pending finance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because otherwise because as salespeople, we say we sold it, it should count. But as the business runs, it doesn't count until the check clears.
Yeah. I was going to ask your opinion on this, and, whatever you decide on this is fine. So what do you think about companies that pay the commission up front, all the commission up front, before the job's actually installed and collected?
So I don't do it that way.
Right. So what do you think about companies that do, and what risk do they have? Because full transparency, I work with some companies that have had that policy. I'm trying to talk them out of it, but obviously when salespeople are used to that, switching gears now and doing it the other way is hard, right? You're going to get some pushback. You're going to have some growing pains there.
Yeah.
But they've had issues where they pay commissions up front and inevitably the job cancels post rescission or something like that.
But don't they pull it back?
Well, exactly. And then that also, they do pull it back, but then
Same
that
amount of
demoralizes the salesperson.
Yeah.
They get pissed. And then there's just a lot of toxicity there.
Yeah.
So versus, there's some volume bonuses, maybe you got a little salary, some perks, but the meat and potatoes of the commission, in my opinion, should be paid when the job's fully installed and collected and everything is net 100%.
We pay it out half up front,
Yeah.
half on the back end.
Yeah.
And that way you stay interested.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, you're not interested. And so if I need an addendum, if I need you to engage with the homeowner, that's how I make sure.
Yeah, because if they get paid up front, then they're just wiping their hands clean and I'm on to the next one.
Right. And depending on what state you're in,
Yeah.
depending on where you're located and what the law is in that state, so you got to check with that. We write it as unearned. Everything is unearned until the job is complete and collected, and then you've earned the commission. So anything that you're getting on the front end is a draw against future earned.
Exactly. So if they do have to get a claw back, they understood, like there's nothing written in stone about that. That was a draw against future commissions, but when it's goes net and it's not in the earn column.
Right.
Yeah, that's really smart.
So I like to have, they need to have skin in the game through the process.
I agree. That's really good.
So you got your pending finance amount, cancel before net amount. Then you've got your declines, your credit, your decline amount. So we keep track of all that so that we can go back and market to those people. Maybe we have a new finance program. Maybe this credit maybe terms have changed. Maybe it's loosened a little bit, so we can go out to these people again and hit them again. That's why we track all that.
That's really great.
Net count, net amount, all self-explanatory. We track the net conversion and then cancel after net. We all have cancellations that happen after the 3-day right of rescission. And so my philosophy on that is that if they don't want to do work with us, I mean, why am I gonna? What am I gonna do?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a horrible experience if I hold them to it.
So that's a really great topic. So there's companies I know that if a customer cancels post rescission, they're very hell bent on taking the money and running and going down the legal route and all this stuff. Whereas a lot of the high performance organizations that I work with, if as long as like the product hasn't been literally ordered, shipped to your warehouse, and it was just some crazy situation where the customer was fully at fault, if they cancel within a reasonable time, nothing's been ordered yet, you don't have all that skin in the game, like refund them their money and like do good business. It's going to be good karma. You're going to get referrals from that type of person because ultimately you're trying to build a good reputation. If you're constantly going to war over these things, that little gratification you get from getting that money now is going to backfire later. That's just my view.
Yeah, it's not worth the social media backlash.
I'm sure you saw that in the Better Business Bureau complaints, right? I mean, how many of those do you run into?
It's like, I get it. You're under a contract.
Yeah.
But the effort that is necessary and the angst that it puts onto the business owner or the people in the business having to deal with, think about the group that has to support this customer now. And now you're creating all of this turmoil within the organization when really the best thing to do is just say, here's the money, go, wish you the best.
Yeah, because you don't know their story.
Cancel save program.
Yes. Oh, of course.
Right?
100%.
So that doesn't mean you're not going to give it an effort.
Yeah, you're definitely going to
try.
You're definitely going to go out and save that deal whenever possible. But life happens. They lost their job or something happened financially, catastrophically, where they had to back out. In the right circumstance, you always want to try to save those 100%. You should have robust training on cancel saves. Try to reel in as many of those you can, but be prepared to refund their money and do good business and do right by them. It'll come back to you positively later.
Yep, absolutely. So with this report too, what I like about this is that we're able to drill down
So, well, this is where you can take an individual and get literally as granular as you want to get, like in terms of what they're doing.
So let's take a look at her. We could take a look at her issued leads, and just at the click of a button, boom, there they are, all are. It's got information in there, what she quoted, last price offered, the financing option that was offered, and then the notes, basically her results for each one. So we can look at her demo, no sales, her issues, her no demos. We can look at all that.
Yeah, and having all this data too, if you're putting together any rehash program where someone's taking a second stab at it, that's going to give them a lot of intel as to how to go back in ready, prepared.
So and then you go down, we can look at her gross sales. We could look at her net sales. We can. This one is where I'm at a lot, is the pending finance. What's going on with these pending finance jobs? Meaning, it's just waiting for, or we're just waiting for the check to clear. Okay. We hit the button at the finance company. We're waiting for the money to clear the bank. Things like that. Or there was questions on the contract. We're waiting to hear back from the homeowner. Needs an addendum. That's all there in those drill downs. Let us get to all that. So that's what this report is.
It's a beautiful thing right there.
Yeah,
so, how many people would like to have that level of visibility? Raise your hand virtually. Okay. We're going to talk about ways you can achieve this. We're not just sitting here showing off, Matt's beautiful executive dashboard. We're going to talk about ways you can actually have something like this for your business. But we wanted to showcase, what are we actually using this for? How do we navigate it? What do these numbers mean? And again, people can design this however they want, right? You don't have to have all this data in there, but you can also take everything that's here and add to it over time. So that's the beautiful part.
So the other thing about this report that's important to note is that we've set up the date parameters for this report. So we know that lead perfection reports on a lead, what day did the lead come in, and then what day did it sell, and then we know that the end of the month is a challenge for people, right? For the reporting, because I ran a lead or the lead came in and I set an appointment, but I didn't at the end of the month, but I didn't actually close it till the beginning of the next month, and so where does that fall, and how do I? So we defined those parameters at the beginning, and then we were able to build our own reporting and our own reports based on our parameters, not lead perfection, not market sharp, not I360. And so we were able to say, this is how we want to run the business, this is how we want to operate it, and this is how we want to look at it. And so that's what we were able to do with that.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. So obviously the sales performance report is a priceless tool. Now, what if people want to know, like, per lead source and all this stuff? Like, how are my lead sources performing? What are the best lead sources I maybe should invest more in? Maybe some I need to pull away, because I think a lot of people, they throw all this money at marketing, but they truthfully don't have the data that really tells them, like, what marketing resources are truly giving us the best return on our investment?
Yeah. So we look at it in two ways. So we have a lead performance report, and then we have a cost of marketing report. So this dashboard is really about, in all the numbers and everything that I've shown on here is old data, so that but you get it. This report though here shows the key metrics for the marketing side. Raw to written percentages, the issued percentages, and the counts, the demo percentage, demo to gross, and gross to net is what we measure on the lead performance side by source.
Yeah, that's huge.
So then we can drill down into each one of these and get a little more granular too. So this is just showing that source, and then we can go into this other one. It shows just that source and what the performance is. It's just on a dashboard basis.
So now how do we leverage that type of data to make decisions about our future marketing strategy? Right?
So really, as you know, each one of these metrics means something else in the business. So what's going on with my written rate? Is this a function of poor quality leads, or is this a function of my call center?
Or sales training?
My contact rate? Is my software doing what it's supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions under each one of these things that we start asking.
Yeah.
To improve the business overall. But ultimately, with this report, the cost of marketing by zip and source report is really the kind of the game changer. This is the one that saved us all the money.
This is the one that saved you $1 million,
Yeah,
you said? Yeah.
This is it right here. I'll give you an example. So we look at the zip code. So if I click on this zip code here, one, it's going to isolate it on the map. It'll, boom. So
there
I
it
get a
is.
geographical representation of where that is. I say, okay, geez, we generated 278 leads out of this zip code. We issued 41. The NSLI in the zip code is $563.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
It's not doing well.
We have $71,000 in declines, and we have essentially it looks like one job for $23,069. We've spent $21,000 in that zip code.
So you got an 80% credit decline rate in that area.
It's crazy. So our cost of marketing in this zip code is 91%.
Man.
Okay, so when I thought of this, but I sold a job in there.
And that's why it shows up as red, right? Red alert.
Right.
Yeah.
But I sold a job there. So there's this concept that people are saying, hey, you know what? We should just cut out the zip codes that aren't working,
Right.
and just cut them out of our marketing mix altogether. And I thought, well, why would I want to cut it out if I don't really want to cut it out if I don't have to, because I sold jobs in there and people will buy in there. Really what I need the right cost of marketing.
Yeah.
That's what I need. And so that's where this concept of tiering, zoning, and dynamic pricing came to be. So I said, okay, well, why don't we just see if some of these vendors would be willing to create separate campaigns for different areas, group things, and then say, you know what, in this area, I'm willing to spend up to $12 a lead.
Yeah.
And see what they say.
Up to, yeah.
And
So it gives you a lot of negotiating power with your marketing.
so that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
But that's the concept.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we now use this? And so what else I like about this report is this one we can drill down also. So we go there and drill through. And so let's look at the sources for this for that zip code. Who's the culprit? Well, we have a whole bunch of different sources.
Looks like the Kohler leads are doing well.
Yeah.
That's a 23,000.
Right, the one that actually sold there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we can look at the actual by source, and then we could say, well, maybe I want to look at by source by rep. So let's see what was issued to the designers, who got in there. So now I can see by designer, and I can see what they did in there and what's going on with each one of those leads. But now let's say I want to go back up and look at it in a different way. Let's go into this, right click, drill through, and then the SPR report on that zip code with those sources.
Oh, man.
And then we can see, okay, who performed well, who didn't. And so when you got a bigger data set, you could say, well, in this area, I know Dominic does really well in these areas. And but in this area over here, boy, does he suck.
Yeah. And there is cases of that. Like I can even reflect, like in my personal career, I had certain towns or cities where it was like a honey hole for me. For one reason or the other, I just clicked with those people and would just absolutely dominate. But then I had other areas where every time I got that on my lead slip or my email, I'm like, oh no, going back there again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it gets it. So I have people that are, I know, I mean, every sales manager knows, you know your people. Yeah. I can't send her over here, but I can send her here. And that's, so that's the deal. So this report really has informed the negotiating and has helped out a lot in that way.
Well, it really ties in all the reports together, it seems like, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
so this is a good one. We like this one a lot.
Yeah, I can see why. That's incredible.
So
no, absolutely amazing stuff. And then you also have a report that's called pacing, right? What is that all about?
So the pacing report, so this goes into your looking at rates of change and looking at trends in, okay, if I set some goals out, and we'll look at that one next, and I'm putting out my projections for the year, and I want to grow 20% on the year. How am I going to grow? Well, you could say I need 20% more sales, but really what it is if your metrics are all baked, if your sales metrics are all baked and you have enough data to say, okay, I know I closed, this is my net closing rate, this is my NSLI on average for the last 2 years, or 3 years, I know that I'm going to hit these numbers, right? I feel confident in that. So then what's the next logical thing? The only thing left to do is feed the machine.
Yeah.
And so that's the real metric that matters. What's my raw lead flow? My raw lead flow in is going to determine what spits out at the end. And so now I need to look at a pacing report. If my growth is built on the raw lead count, I need X amount of leads in each month. And if I hit that lead count, then I'm going to spit out my, most likely, your probability, I'm going to spit out my net sales number. And so I want to see how I was pacing last year versus this year. How was I, what's my goal? That's the purple line here. What's my goal for the year or for the month? And then am I getting close to it? Am I not getting close to it? Am I, what are the reasons why I didn't get to it? Things like that. And so I'm just using this as a visual. And then I look at my marketing spend to raw lead just so I can get a sense of some dollars that I'm spending and that I can track. But the gist of it here is that, so am I trending? Am I pacing? The orange one tells me what my current pace I'm on, and so I'm gonna know, am I gonna fall short?
Yeah.
Or am I gonna exceed? And what if I fall short and yet I hit my numbers? Then where was the efficiency picked up? Is it a higher NSLI? Did I get a higher average contract amount or whatever? Those are all the questions that I start asking. But the point of this is to be able to look and see when the alarm goes off, right? Does the alarm go off on the 15th, or does the alarm go off on the last day of the month?
Yeah.
I need the alarm to go off on the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 10th, the 15th. I'm always looking to see when is the alarm going to go off.
Yeah. So. No, that's absolutely incredible. Again, people just need to have some method to the madness as to how they're forecasting their goals and making business, predictions and strategizing. And, if you're reestablishing a marketing plan for the next year or 5 years, like what data are you utilizing in order to predict those things? Yeah. And I venture a lot of people just kind of lick their finger, put it up in the air. It'd be nice to grow by another 4 million next year, right? It's like, okay, if you actually have historical data that you can leverage, and like you said, if your numbers are baked, now you can actually make educated and informed decisions I like to think of it as educated wishes.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
But now you're backing with data, and of course you can fine tune along the way. Not be afraid to raise the bar if you're outpacing your goals. But it's good to have a really accurate guideline to follow.
Yeah.
So this is the level 10 report, right? This is
Yeah.
the Mac Daddy.
So this is the summary. We went back a couple of years just to show you how this would work. We load in our goals for the year, and then it calculates everything out based on an average contract amount, and then it says, okay, this is what we're going to do based on our historical performance. This is what these things should look like, and then we come in, and then it pulls the actuals. And then we say, okay, what's the trend? So we can look at that for the month or the year, and then we look at the delta. Are we outperforming or are we underperforming? And so we can look at that and see how close we were to our goal projections.
In those first couple of years where you're growing at 4,000%, I'm sure how are we outperforming? How do you forecast a 4,000% growth?
Right.
So I could see where that would just be like you're just hanging on and, making a lot of changes along the way.
But this informs all your future stuff. So those first couple of years, okay, maybe I know what's my written rate supposed to be, what's my issue rate supposed to be. I mean, it's guys like you where you're talking to a whole bunch of people and you're saying, look, this is where these need to be, this is where they should be. So that's where the benchmarking comes into play, where you're understanding and you can get the knowledge from somebody that knows what the industry is. And then you take that and work off of that, essentially, and then you can find out if you're outperforming or underperforming.
Yeah. So obviously a lot of incredible data, and I'm sure people watching this, they're looking like it would be really amazing to have something like that, but the thought of building this out makes me want to tear my hair out of my head, right? This is why, this is what happened to me here. So if I'm an owner watching this and I'm looking at this, I got the sales performance report, the lead performance report, the cost of marketing per zip, obviously the level 10 report, pacing, all this stuff, all this amazing information. If they're interested in having something like that built for them, can you share this new exciting opportunity that we have, obviously through Grosso University and our partnership, where if people want the ultimate executive dashboard to finally own your business so your business doesn't own you and you don't have this ticking time bomb, where you have full visibility and you can make data-driven decisions, how does one go about that?
Yeah. So we've partnered. I'm also a part owner in Buku. Buku Pros, Buku Leads, and the team that built this is a part of Buku, and so they are we have the ability to do this for others. And depending on what system it is that we're working with, but our guys would sit and do a discovery call and figure out exactly what needs to happen, and then they would take you down that path of creating some of these dashboards for you. These are the kind of the canned reports that we would make available right out of the gate, and then there's other custom options and things like that.
Yeah, so if you're an owner watching this, be like, I could see how much damage I could do so I can thrive in 2025 and beyond by having this ultimate executive dashboard to truly command my business from A to Z. We are now offering that you can actually have this built out for you, how you want it, the way you want it. Obviously, there's a discovery call to make sure that whatever systems you have in place or CRMs you're using is compatible with what we're doing so we can extract this data. But I think you would agree that most of the industry is probably relying on compatible technologies and services where we can pull that data and build this out for them. Yeah. So now, obviously, building out a dashboard like this, it's a big project, right? There's no sugarcoating. It's a lot of work, a lot of data entry. So what we're going to do is we're going to offer this service to the first 5 companies that want to get started. So if you're looking to absolutely thrive in 2025 and beyond, having this executive dashboard, you're going to absolutely shatter the record boards. We can't promise 4,000% growth, but we can definitely promise that when you have this priceless visibility You can really take a peek behind the curtain, under the hood, is everything that's going on in your business. It's going to give you a lot of power. So again, your business does not own you. You can work on your business and not in your business.
Yeah.
You can still be that manager or man in the middle, having your hand on the pulse of everything. But now you finally have the visibility you need to truly command your company. And we like people that are commanders and not demanders, not just shouting at people hoping things change. You can actually know exactly where you need to invest your energy and your efforts to get the most return out of your investment.
We boiled it down during that growth period. We boiled it down to 3 acronyms using these dashboards. It was GML, HMP, and JFW.
Okay.
Get more leads,
Yeah.
hire more people, and just effing work.
I love it. That's beautiful. I love it. Oh, I forget. I just saw someone wearing a hat recently where it says, "I don't care, work harder." It's like, I don't care about your problems, work harder. So absolutely amazing. So I just want to let everybody know that this is a pre-recording. And of course, after this pre-recording, we're going to open it up for live Q&A. So if you have questions about this dashboard, or you want to ask Matt Colligan some tips of how he utilizes this to command his company, command his teams, we're going to open it up for 5 minutes of live Q&A. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But I just want to thank you, Matt, for the partnership. I want to thank you for everything you're doing for this industry. I think it's desperately needed. Like you said, stuff like this is pretty commonplace in other industries. People are used to seeing this, but in the home improvement industry, there's still a lot of companies that are going through this nightmare situation of all these different spreadsheets and dashboards and CRMs and platforms. And it's like, again, you're going to spend most of your life just trying to navigate through all these technologies. So having this one dashboard, executive dashboard to rule them all, it's going to save you a lot of time, effort, save you a lot of money. It's going to help you get more leads, get more on, as we're talking about here, and absolutely thrive in the coming years. So I just want to say to everybody watching this webinar, we really appreciate your time. It's not something we take lightly. We know there's a lot of things you could be doing, and we hope you found this information absolutely inspiring and educational. And make sure you stay tuned for other future Grosso University webinars where we're going to bring on additional bright minds just like Matt Colligan here to show you how to grow and scale a more profitable company. So with that in mind, as always at Grosso University, yes, you are a closer.